Let's talk about hotbars. Hotbars, and specifically, we're going to talk about cross hotbars. Hotbars can be a very overwhelming thing, especially as you get more and more buttons through this game. With Evercold coming out and the reduction of button bloat, that will probably get better. It's a good rule of thumb to have some rules around how you lay out your hotbars so that it doesn't get confusing as you're moving between classes. Personally, I have 7 rules that I use as my design ethos when it comes to putting my hotbars together. Let me share them with you. So before we get started, I want to extend a shout out to one of the rogues who has really inspired me to put more emphasis on this video than I originally would have. I didn't necessarily intend to do this yet, but I shared my config and I didn't realize I could share my hotbars as well. And in all of their questions, it made me really start thinking about it. And I was like, this is actually really fun to think about. So I appreciate you. So let's get into my design rules. First, you will need to see my hotbar. I'm going to cover the majority of this from the perspective of my Gunbreaker hotbars since this is my main, but I will touch on some of the exceptions that each role carries so that you have that understanding as well. And hopefully it'll help you to lay out your hotbars. I'll also share my config down in the description. So if you wanted to just copy it in and then feel free to ask any questions that you have either in the comments or you can join the Rogues Discord, which will also be in the description. So the first rule of my hotbar ethos, my cross hotbar ethos, is frequent inputs should be easy access. What does this mean? The simplest way to put it is your main combo should always be in the easiest spot. So I'm going to be doing this on a PS5 controller, but this would apply to an Xbox controller, any custom gamepad you have, or a Switch controller. I am a fan of having everything on R2 that I need conveniently, so that's kind of how it makes sense to me. For Gunbreaker and for every other class, my 1, 2, 3 combo is always X, square, and circle. You can have it this way. You can do X, square, triangle if you like. It's a matter of preference. If you're a fighting game enjoyer, then a revolver system would go X, square, triangle, circle. But I like X, square, circle, triangle as my personal choice. So whatever you like. But since I'm always hitting these 3 buttons, I always want them to be in the easiest spot to press. Above that is going to be the Gnashing Fang combo, which for Gunbreaker is a pivotal part of your kit. You use it often, and there's layers of button behind it. So as you're using it, you're going to continue to use that same button with a lot of stuff on it over time. On the directional buttons over here, you'll see my weaves and abilities that I use whenever my 2-minute window is up. You can design these a little bit differently than how I do it, but as I get into the other rules, it'll kind of make more sense why I've put them here. As you'll note here, this is set 1. I do have 2 sets on most of my classes, or some have 1 more set, some have 1 less set. Set 2 is very, very similar to set 1, as I'm sure you can tell. The only changes from set 1 to set 2 are that these are my AoE abilities now, and this is my AoE cartridge consumer. So when I'm using AoE instead of using Gnashing Fang necessarily, this will be something that I'll be using a lot during dungeon pulls. But this is the only difference between these 2 hotbars. And this leads directly into my second rule, which is overlapping abilities should be on the same button. So the similarity between these is my 1, 2, 3 is a single target, and my 1, 2, 3 as a AoE are in the same spot. Along with that, on this second hotbar, my Gnashing Fang is in the same place. All of my directional button abilities, same spot. Even on the L2 side, these are all in the same place. I didn't talk about L2 in the previous section, but you'll notice 2 things here, and this is also consistent across all of my classes. My ranged attack is always on triangle L2, and my sprint is always on XL2. Additionally, arm's length, or surecast in the case of casters, is always on my right directional button. My class heal, so here that's Aurora. On DPS classes, that'll be second wind. And then for tanks specifically, my invulnerability button is always here on the left D-pad. Regardless of what class I'm playing, if I have a dash, it's always on L2 square. This way I don't hit these buttons when I don't want to, but they all have a very specific use timing. You'll see that I have Bloodfest here, which is part of my 2-minute window buffs. But in order for me not to break the rules, I started putting my extra buffs on the other side of my hotbar so that I could track them better that way. But they're things that I don't have to hit frequently. Or if I'm using, in the case of using this is the only button I'm hitting when I'm here besides sprint. the idea there is that similar abilities should be in the same area, regardless of what hotbar you're on. And this goes for different classes too. If I go through my other classes, you'll see a very similar theming of the AoE buttons being layered with the single target buttons. And as another great example, if I flip over to Samurai, if you look, you'll see that I have Hisatsu Sene on this hotbar, and it's the one that shares a recast timer with Guden, the difference being that they are single target. If I flip to my AoE bar, you'll see that I have Guden here, and Guden is the multi-target, but they are an overlapping ability. You either use one or the other depending on the situation, so they are on the same button regardless of which rotation that I'm on. So on to rule number 3, similar ability types should be in the same area. As another example of having similar ability types in the same area, if I double tap R2, it takes me up to this section. And you'll notice that this section is fairly clear what each side is. So the right side, my buttons are going to all be my mitts, my single target mitts, or self mitts. On every class, these 4 buttons are always the same. It's always Rampart on square, my 2 class mitts on X and circle, and my baby mitt or my baby mitt on triangle. That's how I have it set up for all of my tanks. I'll show you for Paladin and for Dark Knight. Always in the same spot, so that regardless of which tank I'm playing, I don't ever have to think about where my mitts are. They're always in the same place. And then in the same token, and you probably saw in the other ones, the left side, my directionals, left is always reprisal, rep, and right is always my class AoE mitigation. Those are always in the same spot. Shirk and Provoke, always also in the same spot. There's some place that if I need to get to them quickly, I can do so, but not some place that I can accidentally burn them when I'm not supposed to. In that same vein, as I mentioned earlier, a bunch of my class safeties, my invuln, my heal, my arm's length, are all over in that section that are grouped together. Using the Reaper perspective for DPS, you'll see a similar theme of all of my single target abilities are grouped together here. All of my weaves and my 2-minute buff is always here. Those won't be around in Evercold, but that's where I always put this. Up at the top, you'll see that all of my class mitts or all of my mitigations for DPSs are here, except for True North, but it's a role skill that is situationally important. And additional occasional weaves or trigger abilities are on the right side, and that's how it always is for my DPS. I know that this isn't consistent with how I have my mitigation set up on tanks, but because of the way mitigations work for tanks and how many there are, this makes more sense to me, obviously, because, and this is mitts that are very, very few, that you're using at very specific times. So it doesn't require the kind of dedication that mitigation does for tanking. And as I mentioned earlier as well, you'll see my class heal is here. Bloodbath, which is technically another class heal, is here. Arm's length is in the exact same spot on every single class. And I put my class stun here as well. We'll get into rule number 4, which is crucial situational abilities should be easy to access, but hard to input by mistake. Red, fat fingering. I am super guilty of fat fingering. I have really chubby phalanges. I'm just born with it. What are you gonna do? So I concern myself with fat fingering a lot. It's probably the main reason I don't use 12 button mice, is because the buttons are small and these phalanges are a little bit chubby. But anyway, any abilities that I think are important, and the example that I'm gonna use here is Super Blide, my invuln ability. These are all my frequent use buttons, and my invuln is over here, so I never accidentally pop it. I have still accidentally popped it, and recently. But that's because I pressed the entire D-pad like a dork. But it's harder for me to do that. It's not impossible, it's harder. And you'll see here that all of my buttons here are things that are either going to be in constant use or probably on cooldown. So it's not really as much of an issue for me to fat finger. You'll see that things like Shirk, Provoke, and all of my mitts are above, because I can't hit those easily. And if I'm fat fingering it, I'm hitting all of them at once. So I mean, we're already cooked. There's only so much preventative measures you can take, right? I'm sure you've already recognized that I have some buttons missing off of this hotbar, but I'll cover that as we get through these rules. So rule 5, Weaves should be easy to access from your frequent inputs. To clarify, weaves, off global cooldowns, oGCDs, whatever you want to call them, are the buttons that you're going to use in between your globals. So if I press X, I'm going to, this is not how my opener goes, but I'll say it this way for the sake of explanation. If I press X to use this ability, things go on cooldown. I'm going to use 2 of my weaves before I use square. Those need to be someplace that is intuitive and that I'm not going to mess up my weaves by having too many button inputs in between. But the idea is that you can get to your weave buttons really easily and make things happen without additional mistakes from having to switch to another side or find another hotbar or whatever the case may be. For 6, cooldown should always be visible. If you want to put your cooldowns in places that you can't necessarily, on your crossbar, that you can't necessarily see all the time, such as tucked behind your L2 R2 or R2 L2, whichever, what you can do, and something that I used to do, I don't really do as much anymore, is you can have a little mini hotbar that displays your cooldown relevant abilities here. I don't know why I have limit break on there. I don't have an answer for you. Because I used to click on them. But you'll see if I were to put divination, which is this ability, I have it down on my usual 2-minute buff spot. If I were to hide that somewhere, I would still be able to see the cooldowns here. I wouldn't be able to click it because I'm using controller. I wouldn't be able to click it very easily, but I would still know the cooldowns for it. So if I wanted to put it somewhere else, I could do that and you'd be able to see what the cooldown is. And I've done that for quite a few of my hotbars. I've just stopped using that since I've switched to controller, since I haven't felt the need to do it. But sure, cast is a great example of an ability that you don't need on your hotbar necessarily, that you could tuck somewhere else so you don't accidentally press it and be able to monitor the cooldown no matter what hotbar rotation you're on. So if you need a tip to do that so that you can organize your hotbars a little better, just go into your HUD layout, toggle on one of your long hotbars and drop your cooldowns on it. It's a good way to get around that issue. But assuming you're sticking with my keeping your cooldowns visible on your cross hotbars, all of my big cooldown abilities are like that. Nothing in the back sections is something that's hiding a cooldown that I wouldn't be able to see. I mean, interrupt and stun, sure. But again, current fight design, those are going to have pretty fair timings and you'll know when you've used them. And usually different people will pass along the need to use those. And you'll know when you'll have it up again. You have a pretty good sense for that stuff because the cooldown's not that long and they're not that frequent. And the last rule, and this one's pretty much the easiest and most straightforward one, and I've kind of been mentioning it all throughout my explanation, is that this is consistent across all of your classes. If you have a type of button on one class that is on every other class, you should try and keep those buttons in the same spot so that when you're converting from one tank to the next, or a tank to a DPS, or a tank to a healer, you will not have to fish around a bunch to remember where buttons are because everything's fairly consistent. So all of my single target abilities are here on every class. If I'm a samurai, if I'm a reaper, if I'm a healer, that is still the case. You'll see that my DPS abilities are still sitting here. But again, healers have some special rules and I'll cover those in a moment. But no matter what class you're playing, it will always have this consistent rule set. You will press the buttons and they will always be in the same place. You'll see, I mentioned earlier that my class abilities for team mitigation and single target mitigation are all in the same spot. If I switch to Paladin, same thing. If I switch to Dark Knight, same thing. They are all in the same spot. Very consistent. And this is important, again, for you to roll between classes. It makes things so much easier whenever you're flipping between things. And it makes it easier for you to fill as a controller player, because even if you're switching classes, there's not a ginormous difference between them. And ideally, even when the class redesigns come in Evercold, you can still use these 7 rules, this ethos that I use for my design, and it will still be applicable because it's broad, it's not specific. 2 things I'll quickly touch on. One, specifically for Gunbreaker, I do tuck things on my R2 L2 for most classes and my L2 R2. So R2 and L2, I have 2 things back here. I have the continuation button. For those of you who don't play Gunbreaker, when you use Gnashing Fang, you get a second follow-up weave and it's right back here. So I literally press the button, hold down L2 and press the second button. And it's really fast to do my follow-ups that way. The second thing I have back here is my dash. You'll see I have dash over here, which is what I use when I'm doing pulls. But oftentimes if I need to dash during a fight, I will use this one because it's just a fast access one. All of my classes have their dashes in both spots because that's my preference. And down here, I have my other cartridge using button, which it uses the same resources as Gnashing Fang, but this is to keep me from overcapping. Otherwise, I'm not using it. So at level 100 anyway. So I keep it back here because it doesn't have a cooldown and it's a situational use button, but I want easy access to because it also has a weave. So I would be doing it this way. On L2, R2, for L2, R2, I keep it much more simple because I'm not on this side of my controller that often. But I have Mount Roulette, and that's what's there for every class, so I can quickly mount no matter what I'm doing in the overworld. And Tank Stance. Tank Stance is here for every class. There are a couple of other classes that follow a similar rule. Sage, your Cardia, I put in the Tank Stance spot. Scholar, your Summon, I put in the Tank Stance spot. Dancer, your Dance Partner, I put that in the Tank Stance spot. Because those are the abilities that you use once right at the start of an encounter, and then it just stays on the whole time, unless you die. And even the death thing, I think, only applies to Dance Partner and resummoning your Summon as a Scholar. So then to quickly get into the healer unique rules. So to summarize, the rules are frequent inputs should be easy access. Overlapping abilities should be on the same button, regardless of the hotbar or class you're playing. Similar ability types should be in the same area. Crucial situational abilities should be easy to access, but hard to miss input. Weaves should be easy to access from frequent inputs. Cooldown should always be visible, and this should be consistent across all of your classes. This method is the method that I use because it works for me. I don't think that you need to necessarily take my hotbars and use them as is, which is why I'm explaining to you the ethos, and because this will be most likely still be useful when we start Evercold and have our buttons change, whether you're using Reborn mode or Evolved mode. But I'm hoping that just kind of talking through it, this makes sense to you. There are some requirements around hotbar settings that you need to accomplish my setup. For example, when I double tap R2 to get to my top buttons, once I press one, it takes me straight back down to the rest of my buttons. And that's why I put things like mitigations that I hit it and I'm done. And I don't want to be up there anymore. And other off global cooldowns that are not frequent use that I need often. I do hope this video is helpful to you. If you did find it helpful, or if you want more information or more details, don't hesitate to hit the like and subscribe button. I can also talk about other control types like keyboard and mouse and different types of those kinds of setups if you'd like. You can always jump into Discord and ask me any detailed questions if you'd like to. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, one of the rogues did do exactly that, and it's been an absolute joy to be able to help out. So I'm more than happy to do that if that interests you. And if you're looking for a free company, you can always come and join the AzureRogues on Crystal Coeurl or Dynamis Rafflesia. Rafflesia is where I'm at currently, but we have a branch on both. Oh, right, almost forgot. FanFest in Berlin is happening on July 25th at 1:30 a.m. PDT, so that might be different for your time zone. But I will be having a watch party on Twitch where we'll start early, kind of discuss some things, watch the keynote, and then chat afterwards before I go to bed, because it'll be like 4 a.m. for me. But if you're interested in participating in that, chatting together and being excited or being annoyed about certain changes, I love a discussion. So I implore you to come find me. The link to my Twitch will be in the description below. And with that, I will look forward to seeing you very soon.